Emily O'Reilly, hello and welcome, and first of all, congratulations. You are the new Ombudswoman, I have to say. First time I use this word, normally it was always Ombudsman. So after this election, what are your feelings, first of all?
Well, obviously I'm delighted to have won. It was quite a long campaign. I'm very honoured to have been elected by the European Parliament. It was a difficult campaign, but a very satisfying campaign as well. I set out at the beginning to do it, if you like, in a very Irish way, lots of personal contact. I think I must have had individual meetings with nearly 70 MEPs, which was very useful for me to get to know them and get to know their views on their work in Parliament and also their view of the Office of the European Ombudsman.
People are complaining about EU institutions most of the time. What should they focus on today? What will change? You said there would be a next step. You would bring this work, this job into a next step. What do you mean by it?
Well, I think it's inevitable that as the power of the EU institutions increases, and certainly as a citizen of a member state, increasingly you feel the, if not the dominance, but the sizable impact that decisions made by Parliament and the Commission, etc., have on the daily lives of people. So I think invariably, inevitably, people are going to be calling more on institutions such as the Office of the European Ombudsman to deal with their complaints. But I also think there is an onus on, well, I've always said the next Ombudsman, it's now I can say an onus on me to work much more closely and in a much more strategic way with the network of European Ombudsmen.
So was there something missing before, would you say?
No, I don't think so. I think all Ombudsman's offices grow in a particular way. The first Ombudsman starts off generally with a small staff, small complaints. The next Ombudsman dares to move it up a notch in terms of looking at the mindset of the institutions and trying to influence them for good. I think the role of the third Ombudsman is to have the office make a greater impact, be a much bigger player within the public administration, and to become a much more effective and visible office.
You're a former journalist. Will this help in any way in your new job?
Yes, well, I don't think it can hinder things. Obviously, communications has been part of my life's work. I was a journalist for 20 years. I was a political journalist for 13 years. I have 5 children, all of whom are deeply engaged in social media. So I have a high recognition of, I suppose, new media, and also the way the media has changed in terms of how institutions have to mediate their message.
I said at the beginning, the criticism is there. The EU institution has quite a lot of, well, it's complicated to talk about EU institution, and it's seen most of the time as something very complicated indeed.
Well, that's indeed, and yes, I mean, I think obviously that the chatter among anybody who works in the EU institutions and indeed the MEPs is how to make people feel European instead of a member of a particular state. Europe is always seen as out there, but I also think that the EU institutions, and I would hope to influence this, have a role to communicate in a language that people understand, that people feel, particularly in a time of recession, as in my country when so many people are suffering and I think are depending on the institutions of the EU that have such a role in their daily lives to live up to the principles and the values of the treaties and indeed of the Charter of Fundamental Rights that they are bound by.
But can you change things? Really, many people say, okay, there's again, this is just a job to be there. It's on paper, it's nice, it looks good, but I firmly believe I wouldn't have gone for the job, and I don't think I would have been successful if I hadn't believed passionately that I would be able to change things. I changed things in my own country in terms of improving public standards of public administration for the people, made real change, I hope, in the lives of the people, and I would hope to repeat that on a slightly different and higher scale here. You talked about the crisis, especially in Ireland too, in Italy, in Spain. You will receive many complaints also where you will have to say, I'm sorry, it's not my job. You have to go to have a look somewhere else. How do you deal with it clearly?
Well, for a start, I think you have to make sure that the resources of the European Ombudsman aren't too caught up in dealing with complaints that are outside of remit.
What is the money made available?
Well, I mean, I think that the job of the European Ombudsman is to work with the network of ombudsmen so that citizens can be helped at national level, and only when it directly impacts on an EU competence should they come to the European Ombudsman's office.
So you say you will be able then to deal with every complaint?
Well, obviously, I mean, I think for many people who come to any ombudsman's office, it's the last resort. You know, they've gone through bureaucracy at a certain level. They're hoping to get some sort of response. So I think the European Ombudsman, like every ombudsman, has a duty to try and help people, even if they can't help them directly, but by sending them to somewhere where they can receive help. But above all, to give a listening ear, because people more than anything want to be listened to.
Emily O'Reilly, thanks a lot, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.